here, and I'll be ready to go. I'll be ready to
Okay.
go, Mike. I know what questions to roll with.
I'm going to put a comment on the Bearcam chat real quick.
Okay.
So you might hear me typing.
All right. Some typing. All right.
And Russ, there is a bit of a delay, so we'll have to pause a little bit in between when we're speaking. So that's something that I'm at least hearing on my end.
Okay. Yes, I will make sure I don't jump in until we're clear.
Good morning, everyone. You're watching on explore.org. My name is Mike Fitz. I'm a Bearcam fellow with explore.org. And in just a moment, Ranger Russ Taylor is going to be joining me, and we're going to be hosting a special Fat Bear Tuesday live chat. So please stand by. We'll be chatting with you in just a moment. Welcome to this special Fat Bear Tuesday live chat brought to you by explore.org and Katmai National Park. My name is Mike Fitz, and I work with the Bearcams on explore.org. And joining me via audio only today is Ranger Russ Taylor. He is in King Salmon, Alaska. So how you doing today, Russ?
I'm doing well, Mike. Glad to join you. I hope our connection is good enough for people to be able to hear.
Yeah, you sound great to me. So Russ and I are separated by many hundreds of miles. I actually don't know the distance between King Salmon, Alaska, and where I am in Western Washington, but it's a couple thousand miles at least. So bear with us as you know as we host this live chat. I won't be able to see Russ's face, neither will you, but we are live with you this morning. And this is a special Fat Bear Tuesday and Fat Bear Week live chat. All this week, Katmai National Park has been hosting a Fat Bear Week tournament where you can pick the fattest Bearcam bear. And Russ, who is in the finale today? Seems like maybe Russ is we lost his audio, but
Hey,
anyway.
Mike. Yeah,
Okay,
I did for a
there you are.
second. I was just going to see if you could let us know how Fat Bear Week got its start.
Yeah, so Fat Bear Week got its start in 2014. And it was just kind of on a whim. A couple, myself and a couple of other park rangers were talking about how neat it would be to kind of pair before and after photos of some of the well-known bear cam bears that people see throughout the summer, and have people choose which one they thought was the fattest. And we did it only for one day. We called it Fat Bear Tuesday, and if it turned out to be so popular that the next year we turned it into a whole week and sort of expanded the tournament, so to speak. So that's how the the tournament started. Fat Bear Week started, and now it's actually become extremely popular. And I must thank you and Ranger Andrew for really taking it to the next level, because it is extremely popular, and it's been really fun to watch everyone engage and get a little bit of an understanding on just why fat is important to brown bears. And that's going to be our main topic today.
Right. Well, thanks. Yeah, it really has taken off this year and been pretty remarkable to watch and to be a part of. And today we're going to talk a lot about fat today, I take it. So, can you tell us why bears need so much fat going into the winter?
Yeah, it's actually a remarkable thing. As a fuel for a bear's reproductive success and just overall survival, it is really hard to overstate the importance of fat. So they need fat not only to survive winter hibernation, but it helps to fuel a lot of different things in their lives. Uh, Fat in itself is an extremely energy-rich molecule. If you were just to take fat molecules on a per weight basis and compare that to carbohydrates like pure sugar, fat is going to contain at least 6 times more calories than carbohydrates. So if you're looking to consolidate your energy and put that away as a savings account, which bears need to do to survive winter hibernation, fat is where it's at.
Right.
And when bears are in the den, uh, they're primarily, again, using their fat reserves. They will burn through a little bit of their carbohydrate stores, a little bit of their protein stores, but the fat is again going to be their primary source of energy. When they're burning it in the den too, it's actually in a sense like a clean burning energy for them. It really doesn't produce the waste products that protein metabolism wastes. So when you are exercising and you feel burn in your muscles, you produce in your burning muscle, you produce a lot of waste products that your body has to expel. But when you're relying on fat reserves, you're creating basically three things. You're creating a little bit of heat, you're creating some carbon dioxide, and you're also creating water. So the water, of course, is important to help the bears stay hydrated. The heat helps to keep them warm. And then the carbon dioxide is just dissolved into the bloodstream, and then it's expelled through their breathing. So it's really easy to kind of rid themselves of that waste product. And the heat is important to keep them warm, like I mentioned before. The water is really important to keep them hydrated throughout the wintertime. So it is the primary fuel for them in the wintertime. And it is, I don't think they could really, even if they had the choice or the ability to choose a molecule to utilize during this long period of famine in the wintertime, they couldn't choose a better molecule than fat.
So, Mike, we now have a fairly famous bear, 409. 409, there was a tweet of a GIF of her uh, showing her transformation from the beginning of the summer to the end of the summer and garnered a lot of attention on Twitter. Can you tell us about Bear 409?
Yeah, Bear 409 is a mature adult female, and she is probably in her early 20s. You don't have an exact age on her, but she was first identified as an independent bear way back in 1999. So she is, I guess you could say, a millennial for for some of our bears here at Brooks River. So she's in her probably in her early 20s right now, or right around 20 years of age. And she's had 4 litters, so she's an experienced mother as well, and quite pudgy this year. I was actually eager to see her before and after pictures because
Right.
she gained so much weight during the summer season.
She really did. The transformation is quite remarkable to see a picture of her in the early summer looking fairly thin, and then the enormous weight gain has really caught people's attention around the world just to see how much weight these bears can pack on. And she's certainly been a great example of that, her and 747 both.
Yeah, it's actually really fun to see people dueling uh, in their Fat Bear Week picks. To see which one is the fattest. It's interesting to see the overall debate. 409 is bead nose is a smaller bear than 747. 747 is an extremely large bear. In my opinion, there is no bear larger at Brooks River, and that doesn't necessarily mean he's the fattest. I mean, that's up for everyone to decide. I have my personal opinions, and I might share those a little bit later on. But they're very, very both very fat individuals.
Right. So, Mike, we're these fatter females like 409. She is really large, and if she were to have cubs, where is she going to give birth to them?
So she gives birth in the den, and this is another remarkable feat that bears can accomplish during their winter hibernation. I mean, there's a lot of things that makes hibernation in bears really special and unique. Not only do they not eat, but they also don't drink any water. They don't urinate. They don't defecate. Basically, the only thing they need from the outside world is oxygen. So a female like 409 who's single this summer, she could be pregnant right now. And bears go through a process called delayed implantation, where they'll mate in late spring, most often, and then any fertilized embryos will be basically floating around in the uterus in a state of suspended or arrested development, I guess would be a better term for that. And then they implant in the uterus when she goes to her den. And only then do they really begin to grow into fetuses that can be born later. So the gestation period and the growth period for a bear cub is actually fairly short. It's only maybe a couple of months, and a bear cub will be born in the middle of wintertime, and that allows females to utilize their fat stores even more efficiently.
And right, in these bears, the average female weight is a predictor for uh, how large the bears will be at birth or how many she'll have. What is the fat? How does it impact the number of cubs?
Yeah, fat. There's been a quite a bit of research to document the importance of overall body size in the reproductive, not only the reproductive rate, but also litter size and cub size. So if you're a fatter female and you had a good summer, you're more likely to have more cubs. You're more likely to have shorter intervals in between litters. So we don't really know whether 409 bead nose is going to have cubs this winter. Sometimes bears just need several years in between, or they come back to Brooks River and they, for whatever reason, the cubs didn't make it in the migration between the denning site and Brooks River. So there can be those factors that in play. But if you're a fat female, you're much more likely to have a larger litter and also to have more cubs. And when they're in the den too, one of the really sort of fascinating things about this whole process is that for whatever reason, mammalian fetuses can't draw off of the mother's fat reserves. It really draws a lot of their growth is drawn from the mother's protein and carbohydrate stores. So that might be one reason why bears give birth in the den, is because after a bear cub is born, it starts to suckle, it starts to nurse on mother's milk, and that is primarily basically just developed, or the mother's milk comes really right from their fat. So instead of those bear cubs growing inside of mom, drawing on her protein and carbohydrate stores, later she's able to give birth and grow those cubs on her fat reserves. So fat for females that give birth in the den plays basically two roles. It helps with mother survival, and then it also helps with the cubs' overall survival and growth in the den.
And Mike, you were saying that she gives birth to small cubs. Just what size are we talking about?
Very small compared to the mother. So for brown bears, maybe around a pound. Black bears, could be around a pound, but sometimes a few ounces less than that. And it is compared to a female like bead nose could easily weigh 600 pounds right now. We don't know exactly how much she weighs, but she could easily weigh that much. So compared to the size of the mother, the cubs are extremely small. And there's biologists have done the math on how big an offspring should be at birth compared to the mother's size. So in mammals, basically female size can be used as a predictor for overall size of offspring at birth. So elephants have pretty big babies. Whales have even bigger babies. But bears don't fit into that really kind of neat graph. They actually diverge the farthest from that graph, and they have the smallest offspring compared to maternal female size of any mammal. It's almost like they're using the den as a surrogate womb. They give birth early so the cubs can feed on the maternal fat reserves and grow in that manner. And the den just gives them an extremely safe place for those vulnerable cubs who really are born blind and helpless. They're not even large enough to keep themselves warm. So the den is a very important spot for them.
Mike, when they're in the den their first year and they're feeding on their mom, how much milk are they getting from her?
Yeah, quite a lot. I let me check my notes here, because I wrote a couple of interesting facts down about that. You read various studies, and there's various estimates on just how much milk a bear cub needs during those first few weeks of its life. I've read upwards of a quart of milk per cub per day. So if you're having a litter of 2, 3, sometimes 4 cubs, I mean, that's an extremely taxing energetic burden that is placed on the mother. And during that one study that I found, on black bears in Pennsylvania, actually discovered that during the first 12 weeks of life, bear cubs required 11 kilograms of milk. So in a litter of 3 required about 32, 33 kilograms of milk. So, about 65 pounds of milk per cub during the first 12 weeks of life. And you can understand why a bear like 409 Beadnose would be trying to get so fat at this time of the year. That is really remarkable. I can't personally imagine, gaining, the weight that these bears do on a seasonal basis. I mean, they do live in a feast or famine world. But then taking that fat, if you're a mother bear, and utilizing it to feed your cubs and producing that much energy and making that much energy available, I think is one of the more remarkable things that mammals may have ever evolved.
Now, Mike, a lot of people talk about older cubs when they go back into the den the second year with their mother. How are they getting their fat during that second year with their mom in the den?
So they're relying basically on their own fat reserves. That is kind of a common question. People will wonder, whether older cubs will nurse in the den, and they don't. They basically go into a hibernative mode and a hibernation physiology and metabolism, just like their mother in their first full winter. So they are drawing on their own fat reserves, using that for heat and to keep themselves hydrated. You can imagine that an older bear cub, to be able to stay active and have an active metabolism while it's in the den, it would need even more than those small bear cubs that we talked about before. So if a bear cub that only weighs a pound at birth over the first 12 weeks of life needs, again, 33 kilograms of milk, then you can imagine a bear cub that weighs, right now 65 pounds when it goes into the den for these brown bears and Katmai. I think it would just be impossible really for a mother brown bear to carry that much weight into the den to be able to feed bear cubs. And then also the older cubs would need to have their whole digestive system active at that time, and that really would end up fouling the den, as you can imagine, with urine and feces. So the dens are fairly clean places. The ones that I have seen really don't smell like a large mammal has slept in them for several months. So they're remarkably clean places, and that's probably one reason why bears aren't defecating in the den, is because it could be an overall hygiene issue.
Sure. And Mike, we've talked a bit about the females. Now let's talk for a minute about the male bears. They come out of the den in the spring, and it's mating season. So how on earth do these large males pursue females and mate when they're so hungry after hibernating?
Yeah, and this is one of those interesting aspects of bear behavior and biology. Russ, you and I, talked a lot about this over the course of the summer, about how female bears need fat to survive and to help sustain their cubs. Male bears don't have the same, how should I put it, parental duties. Actually, they have no parental duties as a female. So males play no role in actually raising the offspring. But they need that fat to grow large so they can compete in the springtime for mating opportunities. When they come out of the den, Katmai is largely kind of a frozen place still. There's very little nutritious food for them to eat. Maybe if they come across an animal carcass, an animal that died over winter, or if they're good at digging up ground squirrels, they can gain some calories there. But they're primarily, during those first few weeks out of the den, they're relying on their fat reserves still, and they may spend so much time pursuing mating opportunities in May and June, and sometimes even throughout the month of July, that they're not eating much during that time either. So fat is going to be their fuel to pursue those mating opportunities. So when we're looking at like a giant bear, at Brooks River, like number 856, number 32, number 747, these really, really big adult males, those bears are utilizing their fat reserves to seek out mating opportunities. So it is an extremely important molecule for those male brown bears. And if you're a male brown bear, size confers a lot of advantages. So you want to grow bigger so you can gain access to the best fishing spots, for example, at Brooks Falls, and maybe even more importantly, more mating opportunities.
Well, Mike, we talked a bit about 409 earlier. Now let's talk about the other bear in today's fat bear competition, maybe appropriately named 747.
Yeah, he may be the largest bear I think I have ever seen. And I first started watching bears at Brooks River in 2007. So I've seen some pretty big bears, and I've seen bears that maybe height-wise and length-wise were as large, maybe even dimensionally, maybe even measures a bit bigger than 747. But weight-wise, I don't think I've ever seen a bear as fat as 747. He is actually a real giant among brown bears. And it's kind of been remarkable for me to see how large he's grown, even within my time of watching him at Brooks River. He was first identified as a younger independent bear, a subadult bear in 2004. We don't know exactly how old he is, but if he was a 2 or 3 year old bear in 2004, then that means, right now he's about 16, 17 years of age, really in the prime of his life. So he's been able to reap the advantages of his large size. And it's been, again, really remarkable to watch just how large he has grown over the years. I remember him being sort of just this bear that was good at fishing. He would fish in the jacuzzi, but I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to him. And then one year he just happened to balloon into this real giant, and he's continued to grow even since that time. So I am really in awe of the size of 747.
Yeah, I've also been in awe just watching how many salmon he can eat per day. I've watched him go to the jacuzzi, get a fish. He tends to walk it back to this little island and eat it. And he can do that so many times in a row. It's really, really hard to get your mind around how many salmon that bear can eat per day.
Yeah, I've actually, this summer, I was able to count him eating salmon over a period of 3.5 hours or so. And he was upwards of like 17 salmon during that time. And this was in July when the salmon were fresh from the ocean. So he was taking in over 4,000 calories per fish, probably around 4,500 calories per fish. So again, working, his way upwards on a 60,000 calorie, 70,000 calorie day, just in those few short hours. And that doesn't count the fish that he was eating earlier in the day either. So the capacity of his stomach and brown bears in general really is quite remarkable. I think he is, it's been really fun to see people describe him as, an absolute unit, or those other slang terms for brown bears. But he is a real giant amongst Brooks River bears.
It really has been fun to watch people on Twitter and Facebook and the comments they have about these bears, and the amount of interaction these bears have gotten. It's truly, truly been fun to watch. Mike, are you ready to take a few questions from some viewers?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe we can take a moment to reintroduce ourselves. Do you want to go ahead and do that, Russ?
Sure. My name is Russ Taylor. I am a second-year seasonal ranger here at Katmai National Park.
And my name is Mike Fitz. I work with the bear cams on explore.org. And we're glad that you can join us today on this special Fat Bear Tuesday live chat. This is the penultimate day of Fat Bear Week, and it's been a week-long tournament for everyone, for the world really, to pick who they think is the fattest Brooks River bear. And if you want to do that, please go to Katmai National Park's Facebook page, find the post that is the final matchup between bear 409 and bear 747. Click on the photo of the bear you think is the fattest, and give it a reaction, give it a like, give it a love. something like that. And at the end of the day, the Rangers at Katmai, Russ and Andrew, they will look at the votes and see who's going to be crowned 2018 Fat Bear Week champion. And so Russ, before we get to the questions, I don't want to forget this, but I'm actually on Team 747 side. So make sure that everyone, if you're undecided out there, I'm lobbying right now for 747. I'm going to show my little handmaiden side. Go canvass the neighborhood. This is a very important vote, maybe the most important vote of the year. I've been lobbying hard for 747 for a long time. I thought he was the fattest bear last year and he didn't win, but he might not win this year. But it has been really, really fun to see everyone engaging in understanding, again, that fat is so important to the survival of brown bears. We'll take a look at our questions in the queue here. Russ, do you have, are you looking at the questions or do you want me to
Mike,
pose
I do.
those?
And I know I'm happy to feed you some questions. And based on what you just said, I'm going to start out with this one. This viewer says, so do we think all the 409 voters early this morning came from CBS? Clearly someone mistook the sitting 409 as being fatter than the standing 747. What do you make of that, Mike?
You know, I know that you and I and Andrew both wish that all the bears would pose in the exact same positions, but it can be difficult to do that sometimes to get good photographs of bears. I think if 747 sort of sat in that same pose that Beadnose is in, that he might have garnered more votes. But one reason I think that 409 sort of rolled over her competition in the previous matchups is because she does look very, very fat. So regardless of the position that she's actually in, I think she is a very competitive bear. And I know a lot of people were sort of disappointed that number 480 Otis didn't advance farther than he did. But I think that's also a product of having a lot of new people discovering the bear cams during Fat Bear Week. And that's really the whole point of this, is to get people to understand that bears, they need fat to survive. Their physiology is much, much different than ours. They go through an extreme period of famine where they need to survive on these fat reserves. So it is really, really fun to see new audiences coming in and engaging with these brown bears.
Yeah, I think a lot of people saw the GIF on Twitter of 409, her before and after picture. Last I saw, it got like 165,000 likes on Twitter. So it really exploded and pretty much went viral. So that's probably where some of her support is coming from as well. It's been really remarkable, and Andrew's done just a fantastic job with that. I'm going to go on to some other questions, Mike. How much longer till they begin to den in Katmai? When will these bears actually go and start digging their dens?
It's going to be fairly soon, but probably not for a few more weeks. Probably not until November for most of these bears. Could be a little bit earlier. Pregnant females will go into the den first. So a bear like 409 Beadnose, if she is pregnant, she'll go into the den before an adult male like 747. Really big adult males have the shortest denning period of any age or sex class of brown bear. So sometimes their denning period can be as short as 3 months. So maybe 747 could go into the den in late November, come out in March or something like that. Sometimes a little bit longer. We don't really know for sure. Each bear is an individual in their dispositions, their behaviors, and that extends to their denning period as well. But we can expect most of our brown bears here in Katmai to start to go into the den in November. And Russ, I don't know if you were able to catch this yesterday, but there was a bear grazing on some berries up on Dumpling Mountain that the Dumpling Mountain cam caught. I don't think that bear was going up there to den quite yet, but that's the sort of habitat that we can expect bears to be digging their dens in.
Right, on the Alaskan Peninsula, the average den height is at about 1,300 feet, so Dumpling Mountain's perfect for that. Also, you have the Valley of 10,000 Smokes, about 23 miles away from the Brooks River, is another place where a lot of bears den. And with that in mind, Mike, how much fat do you think it takes a bear to get to a place like that to dig a den? And will they lose much weight while they're digging their den?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure I could say for sure. Bears sometimes will travel significant distances to their denning areas. They seem to show some fidelity towards denning sites. So bears and Katmai aren't known to reuse dens. So they excavate a new den into the hillside each and every year. So they don't use caves or tree cavities. In Katmai, they're just digging a giant hole into the earth. And sometimes they can travel many miles to find their denning site. But even before they get to their den, their metabolism really is slowing down. So they're entering into that hibernation physiology, sometimes 2-3 weeks before they enter into their denning site. And for a brown bear overall, I mean, they are so strong that they're not going to be expending a significant amount of energy before they go into their dens. And I think our helpful, one of our helpful technicians from Explore.org just threw up a picture on the screen there of one of the bear dens in that I found a few years ago on Dumpling Mountain. So that'll give you an idea of what the bear dens look like. And for a bear to excavate one of those, I don't think it takes a significant amount of calories. And so overall, their weight loss from when they leave like Brooks River to their denning site probably isn't significant. But again, I don't know for sure.
Probably what was most surprising to me, Mike, I know you crawled in a den and I've crawled in a den before, and I was most surprised at how small those dens actually are.
Yeah, they're cozy spaces, aren't they? I mean, the ones that I've been in have just been big enough for me to squat inside comfortably. They aren't really large places. I guess you wouldn't want them very big. I mean, the bigger they are, maybe the more airspace you would have, and the less efficient it would be in holding the bear's body heat within. But yeah, they're fairly cozy spots.
Right. They do look just big enough to hold that bear really comfortably. So we have another question that's a little bit different, and it's about the gulls. Now, I know in the past we've talked about bears tend to not eat gulls because they're not going to get enough gain from them. But some viewers have seen Bear 402, the mom with 4 cubs. They've seen some of her cubs munching on a dead gull. So they wanted to know, is that going to help a young cub get some fat, being as little as the cub is?
Yeah, I don't, I mean, I'm sure there are some calories in there. Whether they're expending more calories chewing on the gall than they're gaining is, I think subject to interpretation. Younger bears, though, and smaller bears, since they are just overall smaller, they can make a living on less calorie-rich food resources. Like green grass in the springtime, smaller bears can start to gain weight just by grazing on grass in the springtime when it's young and tender. So that might apply to a bear cub that finds a dead gull at this time of the year. The spring cubs right now between 60 and 70 pounds, so quite large, quite big compared to when they were born. But they're still going to be really kind of reliant on mother's milk, and they're probably also going to be scavenging a lot of salmon scraps that they can find as they're following mother from one place to another in the river. So I think those two other food resources are still going to be much more valuable.
Yeah, and of course, cubs are very curious and like to play with anything they find, even a stick. So, playing with a dead gull would be a lot of fun for them. Another question, Mike. We've talked a lot about survival and how important it is that bears get fat to survive the winter. And we have some viewers who are concerned. Do we have any bears that look like they're not going to make it through the winter? Does it look like all the bears that the viewers are seeing are going to make it?
I think this has been a overall really great year for bears in Katmai National Park, especially in the Naknek Lake watershed, which Brooks River is a part of, because the salmon run this year was very, very large, one of the largest on record in Bristol Bay overall. But as part of that, there were over 2 million fish that swam into the Naknek Lake watershed. Brooks River gets about 20% of those fish. So there was, close to 400,000, a half million fish that migrated through Brooks River. There's still a lot of food there right now. And the bears that I have seen look, at least outwardly, they look physically quite great. It's been a good year to be a brown bear in Katmai. The bears, I should say though, Russ, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but bears like Bead Nose and 747, they kind of skew the curve. They set the curve. If this was a test,
right.
they would be in the 99th percentile, and the other bears would look smaller than them. So when you see a mother bear like number 94, who has 3 spring cubs, or number 402 that has 4 spring cubs, those bears are overall skinnier because they've had to devote a lot of energy into nursing their offspring and just making sure that their cubs are protected from threats. And that takes a lot of time and energy, and that's why they're overall skinnier. But I don't think they're hurting for calories necessarily at this time of the year. They still look to be healthy bears.
Well, I'm sure a lot of moms out there can relate to how challenging it would be to raise 4 cubs. And I have seen in recent studies, Mike, that bears like 409 and 747 this time of year would have about 10 inches of fat on them. Really a remarkable
Oh,
amount.
wow.
And they're going to gain in the season between 300 and 400 pounds. So they can have an enormous depth of fat on them this time of the year.
Yeah, and 747's belly, we've
So
seen in a
we have
lot of those
another
photographs
interesting. Oh, go ahead.
hanging on the ground. Yeah, I was just going to say that
Right.
747's stomach, yeah, hanging on the ground. Just a real giant bear. And when in the middle of summer, he's weighing probably close to 900 pounds. So that's midsummer weight for a large brown bear in Katmai. Now at this time, yeah, great before and after picture. In the lower left portion of your screen, that's 747 in late June. Now we have him on August 31st at upper right. So a remarkable difference in size, and that fat is going to give him a lot of advantages next spring as he's maybe even growing bigger and like we said before, looking for mating opportunities.
Right. Well, Mike, another question about moms. Do you think the moms know that they're pregnant and that they need more food? So I guess this probably relates to like a 409. Would there be any awareness of, hey, I need to gain more weight because I'm going to have cubs?
I don't think so. I mean, at least that's my guess. I mean, and that's one of those questions I wish we could ask the bear. So they don't go through a monthly ovulation cycle like humans, human females. So I wish we could ask them. From what I've read, though, just on bear weight gain in throughout the course of the summer, there hasn't been anything in any scientific studies, at least that I've come across yet, that indicates that a female that gives birth in the den has a stronger urge to eat more food than any other bear. It seems like they just go through this hyperphagia mode in late summer and early fall, no matter what. And their physiology is just telling them, you need to eat, you need to eat, you need to eat, you need to eat, you need to eat. It just keeps on going for them. So so
Right.
I don't think
And
that 409 would necessarily know.
Yeah, the studies I've seen might simply show that if she has enough weight in the den, that the egg will implant in her uterus, and if she doesn't have enough weight, then she's just going to absorb those back into her body, and that determination is just made by nature and biology, not necessarily a conscious decision. I'm not
Right.
sure how our connection is from up here in King Salmon. Are we still good, Mike?
Yeah, yeah. So I can still hear you. Uh, and if you're joining the chat a little bit late, you're wondering who we are. My name is Mike Fitz. I am a Bearcam Fellow with Explore.org. And joining me via audio
And
only is Ranger Russ Taylor. You'll see him on the screen. His avatar today is just a really large male brown bear. So, uh,
that
so
avatar is 856, probably the most dominant bear on the river, and that has no correlation with me necessarily, but that we had to get something up there this morning. Someone's wondering about another male bear, Mike, Otis. As old, Otis is 22, the oldest known male bear on Brooks River. Very, very popular bear. People have loved this bear. He's won the Fat Bear competition the last 2 years. What were things like for him this year as he gets older? Is his temperament different? Are his struggles different? What is the older male bear going to go through to put on weight?
yeah, I think Otis is a great example of the challenges that bears have to go through as they age. We know he's missing teeth. He's at least has two missing canines, or at least broken canines. So that affects his ability to catch fish, maybe defend himself from competitors that may want his fishing spots at Brooks Falls. His molars could be worn down too. It's a very common ailment in older bears, is broken, missing, and worn teeth. So that is at least one challenge that he faces. And then also as he gets older, there's always younger bears that are moving into the river that want his fishing spots. So the competition doesn't get any more lenient on 480 Otis. So he's facing those younger, stronger competitors and more of them each and every year. So far, he's been quite successful despite those challenges. And I think that's a lot of were some of the main reasons why people like to watch this bear, because he is able to find a niche at Brooks Falls, despite being older, despite his, the missing teeth that he has. But it's not going to get any easier for him as he continues to age.
It's certainly not. Mike, one of the observations I've made this fall is that I noticed a lot more bears drinking water. And I know that during hibernation, they do not eat, drink, urinate, or defecate. So it appears that they're hydrating before they go into hibernation. And someone was asking if there are water sources on Dumpling, and do bears need to drink a lot of water before hibernation?
Well, there are some streams that a bear would encounter going up to Dumpling. At the time of the year that they enter their dens, there's probably going to be snow on the ground too. So they could eat snow, I guess, if they wanted to, become hydrated at that point in time. But again, they probably stop, any of those bodily functions as far as waste production goes before they go into the den. So their urine production is going to stop. Their kidneys are going to stop, filtering out, waste. So they're really not necessarily going to be, guzzling on water before they go into their den. When they do go into their den, their bladders essentially are going to be empty at that time.
Great. Well, Mike, I think that's all the questions that we have from viewers this morning. So we probably can wrap things up here in a little bit. I do want to remind people that they can go to Katmai National Park and Preserve's Facebook page and scroll to the competition between Bear 409 and 747. Click like on the bear's picture that they think is the fattest, and they can participate in this most amazing Fat Bear Week.
And again, I would really like to thank you and Ranger Andrew for making Fat Bear Week a tremendous success this year. It has really reached far more people than I really imagined when we started Fat Bear Tuesday only back in 2014. I know Andrew was on CBS this morning, so that was really great to see. I actually will be on CNN International tomorrow at 5 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. Eastern time. So if you want to talk about the or see me talk about the epic conclusion of Fat Bear Week and talk about the winner, then I'll be on CNN International tomorrow morning. So please join me for that.
Oh, that sounds great, Mike. That sounds really, really good.
And don't forget, Team 747, make sure that you are that you're voting, no matter who you vote for. I actually do think it's really fun. So if the bear that I prefer doesn't win this year, that's okay. Again, it is just really important that people understand that bears get fat to survive. I mean, that's the whole point of Fat Bear Week. It's just to show how fat they get and to celebrate Katmai's healthy and robust ecosystem. Without the large salmon runs, we wouldn't have a Fat Bear Week. We probably wouldn't even know much about any of these bears because they would have really no reason to visit Brooks River without salmon. So Katmai is a very healthy, robust ecosystem, and I think the bears are just the most conspicuous aspect of that.
It's true. There's a lot to the ecosystem. It is an incredible place, and we feel very, very thankful just to get to work in a place like this, and love the number of people that visit and that are engaged on explore.org, and that really do love our bears and the ecosystem, and we appreciate all the support from people supporting their part.
For sure. So Russ, thanks again for joining me today via audio from King Salmon, Alaska. My name is Mike Fitz. Again, I am a Bear Cam Fellow with Explore.org. Thanks to Katmai National Park for making this possible, and Explore.org. And Russ and I will try to be online soon to talk to you more about brown bears, salmon, and all the things that make Katmai National Park a very special place. So thanks for joining us today.
All right, thanks.